don't think I've ever actually asked you how you got involved in experiences in the first place, and like what got you into this in the first place, and you know, why do you do what you do?
So when I started in the industry, I went to college for theater and biology, and I was studying lighting design and production design in school. And so, I really kind of came up in designing shows, and from kind of like a background in that, no matter what, you are designing and thinking about an in-person audience and their reaction to whatever it is you're doing. 14 years ago or so, when I first came on here at VT, and it was just a few of us sitting in a warehouse, and being basically children. We really were just designing parties and coming up with installations and stuff like that. They were all very small, like, small budgets. We were doing all sorts of random stuff. But for us, it really was about how do we kind of, build in an element of technology as kind of a mover into what it is for an audience perspective, and really kind of make things that audiences were really kind of blown away by. It really is, how do people, interact with an experience, and then looking at kind of the design for experience as a mover across that.
It sounds like, with your career and trajectory in the experience world, I think starting where you did and where you are now, like when you have to think about like the state of the experience in the industry right now, like where are things now and where are they going?
It's been interesting to see how it's all shifted, especially over the last couple of years. Because I personally don't like to use the term experiential, which if anybody knows me, I don't like to. But it really has been a shift in kind of marketing and approach over time. And I think that we've seen, over the course of kind of, my career, and also our times as a company and everything like that, we've seen the rise of experiential as approach in marketing, as a kind of a focus on reaching audiences and engaging with them for, product, for media marketing, whatever it is. But now we're kind of at a point that, we're seeing actually it being used in I would say, a much more impactful way. We've tried so many different engagement techniques with audiences, where you've got these full TVC campaigns, you've got a you've got digital campaigns, you've got, obviously, rise of social media and web and everything as well, and kind of the shift and evolution over the last 10 years of those markets. But realistically, I think that we're seeing a change in that consumers are becoming, and just audience members are becoming, more discerning and more focused about what they spend time doing and how they spend time doing it. And they seek out meaningful kind of connections and touch points and a feeling with what they're doing.
And I think, going back to that idea of experiential and why you kind of think of it as a dirty word. What like, I think for me, it's this idea of thinking of a in real world experience as like a solo channel rather than being like connected to all those other channels that you're thinking about. And so that's a shift that I'm seeing in the market, is seeing these like, not, we built these marketing organizations that have like very siloed functions and they're executing separately, but there's a bigger opportunity if you're thinking about it in a more holistic, integrated way. But I'm curious, how do you define the difference between experiential and experience, and like what leads folks to maybe make the wrong bets with their investments in this type of thing?
To me, experiential is kind of like when you come down to your basic, how do you kind of capture an audience, give them things that because people love free shit, like they love it. But
Give me
usually,
another tote. I need a tote.
yeah,
I need a
another tote bag. Another t-shirt with a brand I've never heard of. Engaging with people, it really is kind of about, oftentimes in the experiential, is about just having the presence. It's not necessarily about the impact you're making with the presence. It's just about having the presence, because you look at it as another kind of prong of your multi-channel marketing approach. So, you've got it's like, let's just make sure that our name is out there and that people recognize who we are. We already have our TVC, we have digital, we have, our social campaigns and stuff like that. And we need to just rounded out by also in the real world, people see our brand, which is a miss. Oftentimes, it creates something that is lower budget, lower impact, but also the thing is that is overlooked is that this is actually where an audience member or a consumer or anything is experiencing your brand in a tactile way. So you have so much more opportunity to actually engage with them in a way that is going to be sticky and meaningful. Oftentimes, I mean, I also understand the idea of the spend on it, just because it is that, realistically you're getting so X amount more eyeballs in all these other, traditional marketing methods, but you want to kind of rank your return on those, but realistically, the impact potential of what you can do with an audience in an in-person experience-based setting is so much larger. And I'm not saying that experience is only, like a where you meet, your audience in some kind of activation or something like that. If you really kind of break it down, like realistically, our audiences are experiencing every expression of the brand that you're putting out there. So how do you make sure that all those touch points are kind of focused in a way that is on how that audience member is experiencing the brand? I believe that higher quality experiences and design for experience is engaging your audience better. They are involving them deeper and treating them as a more kind of, discerning audience member. There's a lot more focus on actually sharing the brand experience with the audience that is engaging with it, and
Mhm.
then making them, have that ownership of actually how the brand is experienced and how it's expressed, which then kind of creates a more kind of holistic point of view versus it just being a transactional experience of like you get a thing.
I think there's this, all the different channels out there. It's not that a brand shouldn't be in executing on all of them, but the idea of when you think about kind of the pinnacle of control, right? When you make something and yeah, a creator shares it, or you make something that's a Instagram ad, like the context of you're basically doing a like forced viewership of that. We're inviting someone into an experience that you have as a marketer complete control over for the most part. It becomes a much more clear dialogue. In some ways, it's a vision of what we wanted social media to be, in terms of like the end user, the consumer, the audience is participating potentially with the brand, but also with each other in a way, depending on what your goals are and how you design it. And you, as a designer of experiences, get to like, what is the craft through this? How choose your own adventure is it? How linear is it? Or how do we make it less transactional? What are those moments that we can be thoughtful of inside of it? Which is, I think, for most marketers, I think is a really exciting thing. But like you said, I think a big piece of this is also to do that. There's a level of investment, and especially if you're looking at an omni-channel marketing plan that you're trying to execute, and you both need scale and impact. Like there are tensions around that. In the return on experience report, we have this concept that we applied from WARC, that they were talking about, brands having the same challenge in media of like moving up the funnel and doing a brand-led marketing versus, more pure performance metrics. And a big part that they talk about is hey, we can measure things like clicks and impressions and time on site. All these things are much more measurable, and because they are measurable, it ends up leading to over emphasis on the things that are measurable, rather than some of the things that are, I think, for most marketers, like perception change and memorability. Some of these things are more intangible, and so that tension like leads to investment in the things that are provable. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about like how you think of measurement, not only as, I think, a thing for a marketer when they're looking about an investment like this, but also like measuring things to make the work itself better.
You look at, traditional media, or even like the evolution and measurement of social media impact and stuff like that over the last, even 10 years, it has, created a lot of different dynamics of how we're actually choosing to pick the impact of what, we're doing from a media and marketing or an engagement spend, and all these other different variables. In experience, it's much harder to measure just because you're, choosing how to actually engage with that audience, but then also picking the things, from all these multiple points of interaction that you can measure to create, to show potential impact. But I think that, that is oftentimes an easy thing to be amiss just because you're focusing on hyper specific things versus kind of the holistic view of an audience's like value kind of provided to a thing. Now I think we're kind of in a place that, there is so much opportunity to gain from an in-person audience, from um, gaining metrics of actually how they're engaging with a product or an experience, or a part of an experience or something like that that um, shows preference, shows engagement, shows their attraction to a product or kind of even their ability to navigate a UI UX. There's all these micro touch points that now it's a lot more cost effective for us to actually measure and come with an approach and focus on actually how to do it. And I think that that is the other kind of transition we've seen in it. It's just a lot. We're a lot smarter about the audience. We're a lot smarter about the things that they are doing and where we can kind of find the value of measurement in engagement within an experience.
If you're doing a demo of a new product, you can learn how people actually use it, right? You can learn about preferences. You can learn around how people move through an experience. You can, not only how excited they are before they come to it. Are they excited about your brand? Are they excited about the experience? Have they been thinking about it? How they act there and how they act afterward as well. Do they convert? Do they convert at the event? It starts to be a moment of deliberateness around we can create a whole lot of different types of value in this touch point, and we can start being very deliberate around designing the experience. Is this a moment for us to learn? Is this a moment for us to find more consumer insights, to sell, to just create a lot of brand memorability and love, or to create a lot of content to take a stab at going viral? And I think experience can do any of those things. And so being thoughtful about measurement up front gives you the a point to be like, not only what do we want to get out of this and how does it connect to everything else that we're doing, but how do we make sure that that gets, a team like VT Pro briefed correctly to be able to deliver on that? Are we trying to sell here, or are we trying to do something else? Because you can, having more clear ideas of what you're trying to get out of something allows you to deliver on it better, and also then be able to measure it and hopefully get to do it again.
Something that we've been seeing a lot lately and that we've been thinking about as well is that how can we more effectively use experience to bleed into other marketing channels? So how can we make it more of a 360 across it? And oftentimes experiences are used as a place to create content for social, but it's not really focused. It's really just kind of more of a backdrop versus it being a purposeful design that is meant to drive the content story. And then you curate actually, from an intentional perspective, what the content created from it can be, instead of it just being kind of a pray and spray kind of aspect and approach. So, in that context, you're deciding this is what we want to get from the experience. This is how we're going to do it and engage from it. And then also, this is how we can involve the audience.
We had a conversation recently where you were talking about, this model of the experience curve that we've designed together. And, I know you've been doing a lot of recent launches and experiences. Has that evolved in any way that you're thinking about either how you're designing or how you're measuring or how you are having conversations around, what a return might be for a potential client?
Honestly, it's less about the client side and it's more about validation of our design process.
Hmm.
And so using it as a metric of kind of looking back at actually how we are approaching design and are kind of upfront of an experience, making sure that we are looking at it through the lens of adding another focus on intentional design, of saying, like, okay, cool, in this process of what we're doing, we actually are designing and thinking forward towards a moment that is going to provide this kind of capture a point in the curve actually through the experience itself.
Yeah, you set your goals of the campaign and you get all the way, you do your strategy, you do your creative concepting, your creative production, and then measurement is always this afterthought. When I started my career, like, seeing organic social was huge. You'd get tons of reach from it, and the comments, and it was this direct connection with your customer. And when you have that direct connection, it is easier to have this conversation and to learn and to get more than just like, people saw my thing and they remembered it. And now we have to be much more deliberate about that throughout any design process. We want things to get better, both for our own teams in terms of how we're working, and the curiosity that drives creative people, but also to business impact. And sometimes some of this stuff is much more challenging to get today. And so having that kind of intentional approach allows us to, yeah, make better stuff, and more meaningful and more fun to make, frankly, too, because we can we see our work working better.
I think that, moving kind of across it, it has been how do we continue if we are in this space, how do we continue providing innovation in it, but then actually providing more and more opportunity for brands to learn, to grow, and to engage with the people that are making this stuff and actually seeing these audiences and all these various kind of aspects of where they are kind of across these things. So I think more and more, it's just we have a responsibility for to provide education out there,
Hmm.
and like the report is free, go get it,
Yeah.
and I do think that it's kind of more and more in this industry we have that
Hmm.
opportunity, but
Hmm.
then also we have that responsibility to do it.